Hello and welcome to the Cuyamungue Institute, our Q&A Conversation for Exploration series. I'm Paul Robert, the Executive Director and President of the Institute, and along with my wife, Laura Lee, the Director of Research, Education, and Outreach, and of course on behalf of our Board of Directors, advisors, volunteers, and supporting members, we want to thank you for joining us today. The Cuyamungue Institute is an independent, nonprofit research organization committed to researching consciousness in the human experience following the footsteps of our founder, anthropologist Dr. Felicitas Goodman. And as an educational institution, we take an open approach, and we invite scholars in related fields to help broaden the scope of our own work and exploration. And that's why we call it Conversation for Exploration. On these weekly Sunday discussions, we've included a full spectrum of topics from neuroscience, anthropology, art history, archaeology, mythology, archaeoastronomy, and much, much more. And you're welcome to visit our website at cuyamungeinstitute.com. All of our presentations are free. And as a nonprofit, we invite you to become a supporting member. And we want to thank you, the community members who continue to support the mission of the Cuyamungue Institute. Today, let's talk about sound, its transformative power, healing applications, and generally how it affects us in our lives. Previously in these Sunday discussions, we've looked at sound from several angles, from the use of it as an induction method to the visual representations of sound with the science of cymatics. And on a personal note, in the past, Laura and I participated in a sound experiment at St. Catherine's Chapel in the south of England. So for us, this has been a continuing journey of exploration. Let's take a broader look, though, at sound. Sound is caused by vibrations that travel through the air, and as Einstein said, everything in life is vibration. So we are deeply connected on a vibrational level to sound. It affects us in all conceivable ways. For instance, we know music can alter our mood, lead us to feel a full range of emotions such as peace, nostalgia, sadness. It can make us energetic, or it can also put us to sleep. Music can reduce stress and tension, and it's been used as therapy to heal. The ancient ancestors embraced that there was the sacred power of sound in music. Native Americans with their drums, flutes, and chanting, the Aboriginal Australians with their didgeridoos, their clapsticks, their songs and dances, the wood and leather drums of Africa. Some form of music and chanting is found in every culture across the planet. And going back into human history, prehistoric people used carvings and piercing tools to create instruments. In fact, in one of our previous podcast interviews, we explored a 45 to 80,000 year old bone flute from the Neanderthal. So it's a common thread that all of ancient sound and music tradition was, first, the human voice. It stands to reason that the first musical instrument was the human voice itself, from the Vedic chants of India, the songs of the sub-Saharan African, the ecstatic Sufi chants, to the Tuva throat singing of Mongolia. The human voice has moved us in many more ways than any other instrument. So, with the help of today's guests, our journey into the transformative power of sound continues. And Laura, I'll let you do more of an introduction.
Well, so you mentioned the didgeridoo.
Yeah.
I think one of the most potent moments that I had seeing the power of vibration was in a radio studio interviewing somebody who brought in their didgeridoo, and during the top of the hour break, I suddenly got these intense stomach pangs, and I'm wincing, and he's like, "What's wrong?" And I go, "I don't know." He goes, "Oh, let me take my didge." He aims it right at my abdomen, starts to blow in it, and the pain just dissipates.
Yeah.
So, and then I'm fine.
Who was that interview with?
I can't remember. Somebody from New Zealand.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it was so beautiful. Our own ritual, of course, and so many others around the world utilize sonic driving. Right? We know the power of sound. We had this beautiful talk with a member of our community host, Lawson Malnori, ethnomusicologist, on how sound works, the intricacies of it, its power. And we'll continue with many discussions on that vein. But today I have to thank David Elkington. You mentioned
David.
Our trip, David really sponsored going to a Templar chapel on the coast of England and seeing sound waves and the cymatics experiments and seeing sound made manifest. Well, he also recommended one of our panel members today, and that is Christine Grozik, who made a beautiful film, Going Om, very cleverly titled Om, that beautiful toning, ancient Om sound, as director, writer, producer. And so, hello, Christina, and welcome. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. It's exciting to be here. I appreciate it. And I did receive a message this morning from David. He says hello.
Okay, yeah.
And said good luck. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the quote that you used from Einstein a little bit ago,
Yeah.
talked about synchronicity. That is the first time I've ever used that quote was this morning on my Facebook page, talking about a sound journey I did yesterday. So yeah, when you said it, I couldn't help but to laugh. Yeah.
And also, and I want to say that I appreciated your film, and I appreciate how you're looking at the various ways sound is used, harmful to beneficial, and we can just mention some of the harmful ways sound can be employed, which you open your film with, and then the beneficial ways is the therapy, but also the tools that we apply, and our own voice is one of those tools. And so it's really a DIY project, as well as you can use various tools and go to practitioners. You are bringing Mike Hovsek, one of your speakers in the film, who's a clinical therapist and musician using music in your practice. So welcome, Mike. I want to hear how you do that.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, there are many ways. Everything from showing up and doing a relaxation sequence with a group where we talk about meditation, grounding, and things, and then I play instruments while a second person talks them through a guided meditation. And I've been really, one of the awesome things about that is that people will often get so moved they're tearful, and their brains will actually connect what I'm playing to the words, even more so than my intentions. And I think it's because emotionally they're connecting even beyond what, things that I had thought would be there. And
So sound is
pretty
such a
amazing.
powerful medium and full of information,
You know
full
what it
of
does?
content. Yeah.
There's this quote from Victor
Carry
Hugo
away.
that kind of explains that. He said, music expresses that which cannot be put into words and that which cannot remain silent. And it's that idea that it liberates emotional things that maybe you
Yeah.
couldn't find the words for. And that's what I find happening when people get tearful when I'm doing a musical thing in a therapy
Yeah.
group is it's tapping into something that was there, but they couldn't put into words. And suddenly there it is in the room with all of us.
And I think that's so beautiful to get that language of spirit moves us beyond words alone. There's so many languages to speak in this universe. So thank you for that. I appreciate, Christina, you also looked at silence. Silence also. And in our meditations, in our trance work, hitting that point of just the complete nothingness is a beautiful space of its own. So from the nothingness to the all and everything in between, we have a big universe, a big scope to explore. And about the power of our voice, let me introduce our third panelist today, a member of our own community in our community host program. And that is Alexandru Anton, who joins us from Romania, who is a throat singer and speaks about the power of freeing one's voice, the power of nature. And I just want to say nature is one thing that's going to really stitch all of this together, because nature is our home for these healing sounds. Welcome, Alexandru. Thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
Just
Good to
a
meet
quick
you all.
word before we before we dive in. What is your journey into sound and motivating you to throat sing?
Well, I was basically a very keen psychology student, learning all this theory about cognitions and emotions and this kind of stuff. And I was still having trouble in really feeling the different human experiences, and having the courage to dive deeply into this. And so I started going to these shamanic workshops where somebody would come up and play some traditional song, healing song with the drum, and everybody would join in with their voices however they could. And I was witnessing this again and again, how through the power of singing and all these side effects, people were transforming in a quite a short time. So this over the time motivated me to have the courage to sing and explore different styles of singing, and then I got to throat singing, and so the journey went to Siberia and shamanic sound healing, and this is the
Went to the
third version.
source. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, fabulous. Yeah.
Well, so each of us, we have three panelists who've all have their journey with sound and the power of sound. And it's going to be quite an adventure talking about the various modalities of this. So do you have any questions, comments?
Well, no, you already asked the question. So coming back to the idea of first of all, silence, the power of silence. You talked also there's a negative aspect. So we should probably address those now that you've brought those two up. First of all, the silence, and then
Clear it out.
and then we can move on to, of course, as a therapy and the power of it as therapy.
Well, let's look at the power of sound.
Okay.
You cite, and these are well-known news stories, Christina, about the harmful effect of sound. And, of course, the military application as a weapon. So vibration's powerful, can be used for good and ill. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you talk about the harmful side of sound. I mean, if you think about it, it can be used on a psychological,
Yeah.
in a psychological aspect. It can also be used in ways that it could literally kill somebody with
Such
certain
power dissolve.
the power of it. Yes,
Sonic waves
absolutely.
can dissolve a kidney stone, I've
Right,
read.
that's- yeah.
So why not other
sure.
tissue, right? So
Yeah, I mean, when you think about the Navy and the sonar and things like that, whenever they're putting out the waves, they always make sure their people are up because it can really damage us if they are there, right?
but go
And
ask
then,
the whales how they feel when they employ that.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I mean, even we've seen examples, and I've seen recently on different television shows that you're seeing this more and more, where they'll put someone in a situation that to get them to speak, what do? They play very loud music over and over and over and over to break them, right? So, and I mean, this has been used in our history, with Manuel Noriega, which we have in the film as an example. How did they get him to surrender? They blast these speakers with very loud music until he broke. So, sound can be used in so many different ways. We always hope that it's used to help heal and, to nurture us, but that's not always the case, right? But it is very powerful.
Yeah. So, well, it's interesting how sound travels through the universe too. So they say that whatever we emanate really has a long life going out there, radio waves in particular. We're sending out signals. So, and then you mentioned silence. Let's cover that. I never knew. I mean, we've talked with Tony Hull, as astrophysicist, about all the antennae out there collecting data from space. I hadn't realized that there is in Green Bank, West Virginia, a national radio quiet zone. And they have to have silence surrounding this antenna in order to hear the very faint signals from space, not to have it interfered with. That was fascinating. You actually interviewed the gentleman there. Fun.
We did, yeah. It was a really interesting journey. I'd done some research before we went there, just to see what it was. And the more I researched it, I was curious as to what the correlation or the possible correlation between why this was designated as a national radio quiet zone because of this radio telescope, and if it can potentially impact a telescope that size where you can't have a microwave in the vicinity down the road, not even like on the site, but down the road. Well, then what are those waves potentially doing to us that they're much closer to us? So it was really interesting. And there's a whole group of people called electrosensitives that have moved to that area. They've relocated there because they feel that the technology around them
It's a
has a
safe zone.
negative impact on them.
A
Yeah.
safe zone. Oh my God. I was just reading that humans can detect the smell of rain for miles. There's something about when raindrops hit the earth and it brings up some particles of the soil, and then that can drift, and there's a certain sound. They have a name for it. We can smell that. Why? Because we need to be tuned for our own survival to smell rain and seek rain. And surely animals have that. Elephants can travel for miles and they know where to dig, and they learn this through their cultural transmission. And so do we. So we are so tuned to what we need in the environment, right? Our senses are adapted to pick up the many, many signals in the environment that help us survive and thrive. We are social creatures, not only to other humans, but to our entire environment, to the living earth, right? And so, of course, and I wonder, as you do, how are we being impacted? What are the sounds that are being given off, even sub-audio sounds and frequencies that we're being impacted by? You're nodding your head, Mike. What do you have to share on that?
Yes, there's something called infrasounds, and those are frequencies above and below the range of what our ears can perceive.
Yeah.
And those, even though we aren't aware we're perceiving those, we still perceive them. And for example, very low pitches below our range can cause feelings of dread or revulsion,
Huh.
and probably related to things like predators and the things where
Yeah.
earthquakes, things where a very deep low vibration might be a sign of some kind of hazard. And it's one of those elements in our experience where here's something we aren't aware of, and yet we're feeling it. And there's some theory that things like places we write off as haunted or doomed places
Mhm.
might actually be something where naturally is giving off one of those frequencies, like wind traveling through some tunnel or something might generate a bass frequency below our hearing, and we feel this disturbed emotion around it, and it's because of the infrasounds.
I have a naturopathic friend who says that, oh, I just forgot what I was going to say. Sorry. So let's go on. I'll come back to it.
Laura, can I add to that
Sure,
really
please.
quickly? Okay, so to give a good example of what Mike was just referring to, one of the things, like I did a couple of sound journeys last night back to back, and one of the things I do is I have this giant singing bowl. It's a giant singing bowl that participants can literally stand in. You stand in
You
it, and then I
stand in the singing bowl. Oh,
yeah.
wow.
So I'll see. It's. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to
Okay.
really, but this is it. So
Wow, okay.
yeah, it's even got the
Oh,
little
here's your
feet in
feet.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
footprint.
So little instructional, direction there inside. So everyone always says, "Do I stand where the feet are?" Yes, exactly. That's where you stand.
Maybe shoes
So
off. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So they'll stand in, and one of the things that I like to do to demonstrate what Mike was just pointing out is that after they stand in it and I start playing, I have two other people come and stand next to it who are next in line.
Yeah.
And I say, I want you guys to tell me when you no longer hear the sound. Tell me when you no longer hear the sound and you think the bull has stopped. And every single time, I've never not had this happen. People will say, it's done. It's not singing anymore. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I'll ask the participant, do you feel it anymore? No, I don't. And I'm like, okay, let's get you out of the bowl. And then I have them touch the side of it. And they
And
are
it's vibrating.
always amazed by that. Yeah, because I mean, sound is what we can hear with our ear. Light is the vibration that we can see, right? But what happens with those things in our environment that we can't see, we can't hear, they're still impacting us, like Mike was talking about. So when I demonstrate that and then I explain it, they're much more open to it because now they've experienced it. And it's like,
Because we're
oh,
living in a sea of vibration and frequency, and we are generating a lot of them. I remembered what I was going to say. Okay, so I have a naturopathic doctor friend, and when I asked him, because I read a report in the news that it used to be our average body temperature 98.6, but now they're finding that globally the average body temperature has dropped into the 97. I mean, quite a significant drop. And if you're not functioning at the right temperature, your cells are not functioning optimally. So it's important to have the proper body temperature. Being too cold is just as bad as being too hot chronically, right? Your enzymes aren't working and in the right way and all that. So I called up my friend and Rich, and I go, why would that be? Why are you assuming? He goes, we're all under stress. We have stress bombarding us from every angle, every moment of the day. Look at the environment we're living in. Look what we're generating, even though we may not be consciously aware of it. It is impacting us. Not only that, but look at the times we live in, right? So stress can lower our body temperature. And so I think just administering self-care on a ongoing basis, so important, and sounds a really good therapy for that. So what are you finding for, Alexandru, what are you finding for your own personal impact of throat singing? What does it do for you? What have you noticed? And those you teach it, how are you vibrating yourself as an instrument, and that is generating something?
How's it
You become your own singing bowl, in
Yeah.
effect.
Well, it's funny you were mentioning the didgeridoo earlier, and there's actually one of the lower styles which sounds as if you're a human didgeridoo, no, like so. So this is like a very rough, no, very earthy sound. Some people have a slight allergy to it because it's like a very uh, almost forceful grounding. No, you cannot escape from the sound when it's filling the room. And but generally, it's very relaxing and very revitalizing. I would say it's very similar to the sound of the cats purring. And there's plenty of research that the
Cats as
cats
throat
can
singers. Yeah.
yeah, they can how to say join their broken bones like much faster because of this continuous low vibration they are producing. So this is it's interesting that this style is incorporating the earth element, which is very much connected with our physical body, no, and which in general we are mostly disconnected from, and also on a bigger level from the earth as an intelligent organism and source of abundance and nourishment, no. So it's the same. And then there are the other upper styles which sound more like Christina's and
Mike's.
Tibetan bowls, no, which
Yeah.
where you can hear these overtones very easily, and they are very relaxing, no. And many people, when they hear this for the first time, they think it's some instrument or some electronic sound effect.
You gonna demo that?
They
Well, he doesn't have
Oh,
the Tibetan
sorry.
bowl. She has the Tibetan bowls. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like so
Talking about
this is more relaxing, and it's it's actually very interesting that these overtones we are going straight into this kind of more advanced layers of the sound, no? But Christina is here, so it's just coming. Um, this is quite difficult for the normal perception to grasp these overtones, you know. They seem like something like from other dimensions or something. It's quite hard to put it into a concept and really get what it means. So I think I think because of this, it has a very strong relaxing and expanding effect on our, you know, very logical and compartmentalized mind and this kind of
dissolves a few
analytical mind.
boundaries. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I have to say, that same naturopath, I thought I might have fractured a wrist. I hit something. And he
Right.
goes, no, I'll check it. I'll see if your bone's broken. He takes a tuning fork and he holds it next to my wrist. And the tuning fork played itself out slowly without interruption. He said, nope, there's no break. I go, how do you know? He goes, the tuning fork would have picked up a break and it would have stopped. Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
How sound can be employed in such simple instruments, and how our early ancestors had that knowledge and employed sound. Yeah. Down to the binaural beat. You went to the Monroe Institute and you talked with somebody there a bit about binaural beats. We have a couple of sets of Daniel Statnikoff's
Peruvian whistling
Peruvian-
vessels. Yeah.
yeah, that are a little bit a note apart, but when played together, create that buzzing sound in your ears, not in the room, but in your ears. The psychoacoustic effects. So,
Yeah.
yeah, interesting way to.
Yeah, they're usually about 4 hertz different.
Yeah.
So it'll help to balance the brain, right? And I know, Mike, did you want to speak more on this? Did you want to speak more about the binaural hertz?
Yes, one of the things about those high frequencies and harmonics in singing is that it's essentially when a person's singing it, they are singing their note, and then the harmonic sort of sings along as if you're singing with the universe, and
Oh, I like that.
so there's a very um,
Relation.
spiritual experience of you sing your note, and then you hear this other, sometimes two notes even interacting with you, and it's the harmonics that are joining in, and you have to wonder too, why are these things spiritual to us? One of them is that babies in the womb are hearing the frequencies of the blood flowing through the mother, and which is a loud, bassy, rushing, pulsing, the heart pulse. They're hearing, um, you know how you comfort a baby by going shh. That is the sound of blood flowing through veins to a baby when its head is pressed against his body and it's in fluid. It's hearing these certain frequencies, and then when the baby's born and it's fussy and you make that sound, it comforts the child. And in
That makes
fact,
so much sense.
it transcends into so many other things. Throughout all cultures and through history, people comfort their child with some sort of sound that is that's very much the shh or some variation on it. So it shows. You mentioned earlier the word source, going to the source. That's for each of us. Our source is going back to that womb and the frequencies that are there, and what's programmed in us because of that. The comfort, the safety. When are we safer? Than when we're protected in this womb. So it's very comforting to return to those frequencies.
You know that shh. Lawson invented a word to describe that, and timbre doesn't encompass that particular sound. But that sound, that shh, which you described beautifully, and its source, we are from inception. We're hearing that, we're noting that, we're tuned to that, right? There's not even a word that we have for it, and it's so, I guess, deeply embedded in us. It's hard to. It's not without us, right? When we went to Egypt. We went with John Anthony West,
Back in the
and
day.
he showed us. Was it Karnak? I don't know what temple it was in. It would be in my notes. I
Yeah.
take notes everywhere. And he had us step into a tiny chamber in one of the temples that was supposed to imitate the cochlea of the ear, that spiral ear part. And he had us one by one. You can only fit one person at a time in there. And you stand in the center of it, and he said, wait 2 minutes, you will hear your blood rushing through your ears. And indeed, you do. And your heartbeat. And I've always wondered, how in the world can a chamber, like we're in a resonant chamber, and it's so tuned to your own inner liquids flowing. And so it doesn't surprise me that a babbling brook or the ocean or water running or the shower that you take, right? That sound of liquid passing or the wind is so comforting. And the sounds of nature. Thank you for that explanation. I just have to say that one thing that you told us, Alexandru, and I want to talk about the power of nature's sounds and how tuned we are to that, is that when you went to Mongolia to go meet those shamans, the throat singers, you said that it surprised you that everywhere there was a vista stop. And not only tourists, but locals would stop and honor nature, that it was so embedded in their culture to appreciate and activate and resonate with nature. Do you want to describe that for a moment?
Well, it's a good point. I would just mention that throat singing is like heritage for them, and it's not reserved to shamans. Shamans use it predominantly in their healing sessions, it's like whistling for us. You know, everybody there.
Everybody did.
If you stop them and ask them, they can throat sing a little, and yeah, it's because of their culture and the way they are educated. They have this shamanic animistic worldview that everything is alive, everything has a spirit, and it's basically because of this that it's like a reflex. Like you wouldn't throw garbage in your own home, you know, on your corridors, in your kitchen, on the floor. It's like an extension of that. It's like you wouldn't throw any garbage in the forest, especially because you know it's inhabited. There are these spirits which can be contacted and which can cause provocations or can give blessings, depending on how you relate to them. It's like very simple, but it exists in their worldview. And so it opens up this whole new dimension of communicating with nature and relating to it. So
And
it's
listening.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
very. And the story goes that also these throat singing styles are born because of the human connection with nature. You know, these guys were all nomads. You know, they are not city people looking for videos on YouTube like us. You know, they were just staying there in nature and just not much to think about. No, just listening to the sounds and observing the birds, the animals, and the weather elements and so on. So they wanted to incorporate these what they felt were very beneficial sounds from the nature. So this lower style, which I demonstrated earlier, it's like the can be the roar, the strong roar of some prey animals, or the camel calling for its children. You know, it's very rough. It can be very impressive. You know, and this overtones can be the some gurgling of some water spring. You know, it can be the rasping sound of the wind going through the rocks. You know, they were really listening to this and directly learning from whatever was there in nature. They didn't have any other teacher, and by singing in this way, they kind of incorporate the healing power of nature into songs. And they would sing something like, you know, with the, easily understandable words, you know, like, and we had a very nice conversation with the Cuyamungue Institute, and then you know, and then bring all this nature special effects into the sound, into the message, you know, and everybody's relaxing and feeling all this. It's always like man and nature. It's never separation or competition.
Paul just picked up his Peruvian whistling vessels,
Oh,
reproductions of some ancient ones, just to
Right.
say, I just want to acknowledge ancient cultures knew all this and employed this and have traditions of this. So this is Daniel Statnikoff's.
yeah. So he has a set of seven. The seven are played at the same time, and it creates that third element, which you have already referred to. That there's that buzzing, there's that third element of sound, which can't be
Lucascent.
recorded, but everyone hears it. Everyone in the room can hear it.
It's like
If
a
you-
buzzing.
But you put on a recording equipment, and
Yeah.
it doesn't hear that third sound. So it's all
Yeah.
happening within the individual. So it makes it really, yeah.
You know, the sound that appears only in your brain, but it's not in the environment, it is so interesting when in various trance states, meditative states, sounds can suddenly appear, from whence they come. Such an interesting question.
Yeah.
Healing, giving it off. So,
And maybe even coming all the way back to some of the discussion on the therapeutic aspect of sound, because it takes those examples sometimes for us to expand our awareness to realize that we're bathed in this area of vibration, and that there's a deep connection that we somehow dismiss, and just because we can't see it or recognize it on a daily basis, it's not part of our lives. But I was reminded there was that film on Netflix about the people who had dementia, or remember this film? And
Yeah.
that people who basically could not communicate at all any longer, they would put the music on from their generation, the music
From
that
their youth.
from their youth, and all of a sudden they would start telling stories.
Yeah.
The people would snap out of it and remember, oh, I was in high school and Jane did this and we did this, and their whole life just kind of unfolded through
Like the music triggered those memories.
Right. I'm
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
I'm sure you have something to say about that, Mike.
Yeah, Mike, I'm sure that's his area.
Well, it's really, if you look at every major event in our lives, there's so often music associated with
Soundtrack.
it, and it codes the memory and the emotion. And I'm amazed, like every year, my son and I do this trip in our car to get some things for his birthday. And every time I remember music I selected for every single trip we've been on, because it's this special moment. It's a kind of a ritual, going and doing this trip and gathering materials for his birthday and coming back, just that journey with and being together and listening to this music, it encodes that. And most of us can hear certain types of music and it immediately transports us back to some other time in our lives, and it encoded in that is the emotion with it. So if you think about how every ritual, every major event, a wedding, a funeral, a graduation, music is a significant part. And if you removed music, it wouldn't feel like a ritual. It wouldn't feel like a special moment. It would just feel like a bunch of people talking.
Right.
So music, if you think about religions, how much they use music to really take you to that spiritual place. And so it really codes a lot. And there are some theories that music might predate language, and that it might actually be sort of a pre-language, that still captures part of what we can't say in words. So it goes that deep, everything from our own evolution to cultures and history and our own personal unique experiences. A certain song might make me get choked up that somebody else wouldn't even relate to at all, because I have a history with it. So, some musicians who become well known, their fans will say, why don't you play music like what you did 5 years ago? Why don't you create more like that? And the real answer to that is,
They've moved on.
well, not only that, you can't, that music from 5 years ago, the listener has had 5 years of living with that music and having life experiences while listening to it. You can't create a new piece of music that contains all that personal history. They need to live with what you're doing now for a couple of years before it resonates on that level for them. I remember driving on that beautiful summer day to the beach and playing that song, and it was so moving. That's the song isn't just a bunch of tones and rhythms. It's the emotional experience and history that we attach to it.
Okay, so maybe sound contains maybe that's why ancient sounds convey so much, ancient art conveys so much, because there's so much wrapped up in it on an energetic level.
So
can be transmitted through time, culture, space.
Yeah, and
Wow.
within this institute, in our exploration,
about that.
sound induction, the use of sound to experience an expanded, altered state of awareness happens. And that is just an example or an extension of what you're already saying. With all of us, with music, with sound, that it somehow puts us into this different space, and we can call it an altered state of consciousness, whether you're listening to the Beach Boys or whether you're listening to
Classical music.
or whether you're doing some drumming in a shamanic circle. So there's that element there that seems to be where we enter into another phase of life itself, and that's why 70 or 80,000 people will gather in a football stadium to listen to a rock and roll band or some favorite musician that they have. There's something about drives us to want to gather, to go through that thing of climbing into and setting up way in the bleachers where you can it'd be much easier to see it on YouTube, but you still want to be there and be a part of that energy, a part of that sound.
Well, my sister Kim was married to a famous rock musician, and he said that he very carefully made his playlists to get people engaged, then to bring them up, then to bring them down, then to bring them up and bring them down.
Right.
So he was aware of the emotive power of sound to take you on a journey. And I want to say about the power, you said something interesting, and I think this is true too. So much is embedded in us more deeply than verbal words, right? That came later in our history. And look how animals use sounds to convey messages. But we have a friend who's a ranger at Mesa Verde National Park, and there you've got these great houses, dwellings, separated through a canyon, right? Separated along the length of a canyon. And he was noting, because he's a flute player, always walk around with his flute to demonstrate to his tourists. And he was noting how people could hear it across the canyon, miles away. And he was surmising that perhaps, because they had flutes, this was a way to signal and communicate, because it carried further than the voice. And I saw a news report about an Italian village where the people sang because their voice in song could carry, not the words, but the sequence of tones could carry across, they could communicate, because they were so far distant from the other members of their village, the way that their topography was arrayed. So I think you're onto something. I think that just as other animals look what whales can do. They can go down into the ocean, find that sweet spot where pressure and salinity and depth, and their voice travels for miles. So they know. There's their listening station. Let's just go down to that depth and they can hear half a globe away. So, sound waves. Yeah. And as communicative, boy.
Yeah, and Laura, Paul, can I add something to this? So kind of going
that's why you're on the panel. Yes.
Well, thank you.
We're going to start taking questions in a moment and comments from our audience. Yeah.
Yeah, going back to what we were just talking about, one of the things we did with the film is it's a very entry level, an exploration into the world of sound and how everything around us is sound and vibration. And we went to Graceland. We talked to the folks at Graceland. We went to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland to ask, okay, so you have a structure where you have a letter that someone wrote or an article of clothing that someone wore, right? Someone that happened to play music. And you have visitors that will come from all over the world just to witness these things. Yes. So in Graceland, so many people go there. And why is that? Is it because that article of clothing is so important or that letter is so important? It's because the way the music made them feel. It elicited a certain emotion within them that has stuck with them. Or another example is if you watch a film, something like maybe Jaws, where most of us know that dun 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 dun, right? I challenge everybody to watch that scene without the sound. It's a very different scene. It's not quite as scary. So, when you're doing sound design on a movie, that all comes into play with how that's going to affect your movie watching experience. If you go to a sporting event and, there's a reason that they have a loudspeaker and they have music and, it gets people going. We had a drummer from the Cleveland Indians that we had interviewed, and he has been going to every single game minus this past year, but he plays the drum, and we were able to witness the impact that drum had on an entire stadium of people. And when he would start playing, everyone would start cheering and roaring, and it really made a difference in the energetic value of that stadium. It impacts us in a way, and it unites us in a way that sometimes without sound, we may not get to that same space. So it's part of our everyday world in so many different aspects. And going back to the nature side of it, Alexandru, you were talking about this. I mean, if you think about who we are, the composition of who we are as beings, right? We are air, we are fire, right? We are water. So we are nature and nature is us. So whatever we are doing to our environment, our home around us, right?
Right.
We are doing ultimately to ourselves. It may not be today, but it's going to be sometime in the future. I think Chief Seattle gave in his speech when they wanted to buy his land. And I thought this was so profound. He basically said that, you know, how can you buy the land? How can you own the rivers? How can you own the wind? How can you own the animals? They are us and we are them. And when I first read that, I wanted to read it in a workshop I was teaching, and I read it and I was just sobbing. And I'm like, I can't read this in a workshop, you know? And I practiced and practiced. And the first time I'm like, okay, you know, I'm going to get through this in this workshop. I'm not going to cry. I read it and I got through it. Didn't cry. I was so proud of myself in that moment. And then I looked up and several people were crying, which then I just started bawling and I'm like, oh my gosh, why are you guys crying? Ah. So, but yeah, sound impacts us. And I mean, it's all connected. Everything is connected. It is all connected.
My hometown is Seattle, from which Chief Seattle gave his name. And just to make a point on the power of sound and how it imprints us early on. So I'm in a radio studio and our guest is John Hogue and he wants to talk about prophecy that he's researched or something. And so, but he's also a former opera singer, right? But I'm saying, how did you start out in life? Oh, I'm an opera singer. Well, sing us something. I've got to hear your voice. He goes, well, I'm going to sing a song that everybody out there listening knows. And I'm thinking, well, what's this going to be?
Something really elegant.
Okay, this is what he sang. Gilligan's Island theme song. Because many of us grew up where our parents parked us like at 5 o'clock to this TV show so they could make dinner. Like my mother did, right? You're just like, it's like there. It's a cultural thing. And then it went into reruns, so everybody knows it, right? And it was so hilarious. And he's just singing it with such gusto and resonance and everything. The phone lines light up and everybody wants to hear more theme songs from the TV shows that they grew up with. Yeah. I'm like, okay, forget prophet, you know, this is what people want to hear. Yeah. So a good demonstration of the power of song that imprints us, right? And I know that, I know a lot of moms who are listening to classical music because they're pregnant and they want their growing baby to be imprinted with healing songs, right? So that's the thing. Now, playing it for your garden, if you're a gardener, people play it, and I think they've done. Cleve Baxter, did we interview him? Cleve Baxter?
Yes, we did. Yeah,
and he really
effects
looks
of sound on plants. Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So. Yeah. Oh, I have got a story to share with you, Christina. You talked with somebody who had a device, goes out and hooks it up to the plants, and it's finding a resonant from Damanhur, right? Okay, we know, I've not been to Damanhur in Italy, but we know Keith Busha, who made a film going to Damanhur and interviewing all those folks and about what they're doing in these devices that they're creating. So I thought, okay, interesting. Yeah.
I would love to see that film. Yeah, I would love to see that.
Yeah, I'll put you in touch with Keith.
Okay.
And also, I don't know about the aura reading, if it's an interpretation of it. Valerie Hunt was another interview, and she was trying to correlate the actual frequencies to color and to see if people who saw auras were seeing the actual frequency that related to the color that we know. Red's a certain frequency, blue's a certain frequency. So I don't know about machines that interpret, as opposed to, I don't know how that works. That would be interesting to know. But I will say that we probably have that within us in some degree, right? We're picking up those signals from people, whether we consciously or how it reads out in our brain or experience or our senses. Our senses are so widely tuned. We have more senses than we know, is my experience.
Yeah, and I think Mike had pointed out, and I think in the sound community, we have a saying, and it's that your energy speaks before you say a word. So, and Mike had pointed out about the haunted house. So you can feel energy, you sense it around you. You may not hear it, but you sense it, right? You meet someone for the first time and you're either like, wow, you know, there's something about this I don't know them, but there's something about them that's so inviting. Or maybe you meet someone and you're like, ooh, I don't know about this one. Or you go into a room
Yeah.
and it's just really cozy and it feels so welcoming. Or maybe you go into a room and it doesn't, and you feel like you want to leave. So there's energy all around us. And I mean, there's so much, I mean, even around us, right? There is this energetic field
Oh
around us.
yeah.
We are
Yeah.
energy. And you go into a place and people are unhappy and it just kind of brings you down. Or you have that friend or acquaintance that you know that every time you talk to them and you're like, hey, how's it going? And they're like, ugh. You get off the phone with them and you just feel so heavy all of a sudden. And
Drained.
you were so excited for the day. And now it's like, oh man, you know, wow,
I think our
restart.
pets are really good sensors of that, right? If your pet doesn't like somebody, pay attention. And we used to go out and just sit. We had a Malamute wolf dog for many years. You just sit with him and you start to tune into what he's listening to, and his ears will cock, and you know, you start to try to listen to what he's listening to. Good appreciation of nature. Do you want to go to the chat room for these?
Well, yeah, Tony just asked, is there an association between sound and scent?
Oh,
I would imagine.
beyond synesthesia. Tony,
Yeah.
do you want to ask questions yourself? Yeah, and Lori also has something. So
This is a good start. I mean, I keep on thinking of the longest memories are perhaps those of scent, but music is close behind. And I'm just wondering if there are triggers between sound and scent that have been explored.
Yeah.
there's triggers between scent and memory.
Yeah.
Well, there's
You
also
We know that.
there's the idea of what fires together wires together, meaning that when two things
Oh,
co-occur,
okay.
your brain makes a connection. You create neural pathways to that idea. And so, for example, if you're cooking a meal, you know, the scent and the sounds, all the, you know, there's a whole range of aesthetic things occurring, sensory things occurring when you're making a meal. And so your brain ties these things together, and that's why when I open the can of cat meat, my cats immediately are hungry and come running. You know, it's things like
Oh,
that.
scent response.
We have that strong, you know, Pavlovian kind of reaction even to sound or scent. But also, you mentioned synesthesia, and you know that co-wiring between senses, sometimes even crossing over. And the most, I think, most wonderful example of that is the Russian composer Alexander Scriabin, who
Oh,
was synesthetic, and he composed these massive pieces that included sound, poetry, dance. He wanted to do something that included caress, physical caresses, sense. He had different sense. And he would just pull all these things together. And his goal was, if we get enough of this happening at once, would it end the world as we know it and create a new one? And he was working on this piece called the Mysterium, which was the goal was to pull all these elements together. He even wanted monks singing on tops of mountains simultaneously with this. It was really, really complex. And he passed away just as he was working on the Mysterium. And it left us with this permanent mystery. What was going to happen if he pulled all of this together? But it was because he got interested in it because of the idea of sound and color. And he also incorporated that, you know, incense and bitter, you know, acrid scents and things like that. He wanted to pull these. He actually invented a color organ where you play the notes, and instead of playing pitches, it plays colors. So he was pulling all these sensory things together, and it's really a fascinating phenomenon. There are people who have synesthesia, and they, for example, can taste a shape. You know, they can look at a shape and their brain encodes it as a flavor, or they can hear a sound and immediately associate it with a color or something.
yeah.
So Scriabin had his main was the color and tone,
Wow.
color and pitch. So
Oh,
it really shows, and people when they do hallucinogenic drugs often get that synesthesia, and that's why, you know, you think about how many visual things and all these things that come together. You know, go to a
their
Grateful Dead
brains
concert.
actually cross wiring. right?
Yes, it's
Signals
causing this
delivered to another
process.
part of the brain and is processed in a certain way. And by the way, you don't need drugs to do this. We can testify.
That's right. That's right. It's the one that people immediately think of, so it's a good reference point. But you're right. You
Yeah.
can do those through meditation and other things as
Yeah.
well, which are
Right.
much safer and healthier, and legal as well.
And even legal.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tony. Was that more, Tony?
Yeah.
Well, just a comment I would make, which I think is interesting. I've attended several archaeological talks on the theory of production of rock art in conjunction with where there are special acoustic effects.
Oh, yeah.
They've looked in canyons at where there are panels. In some areas where they're acoustically dead, there's no rock art. And then you go a quarter mile farther and it's acoustically alive, and there are hundreds of rock art panels. And then you go on farther and there's no rock art again. There's also a theory, one of the remarkable places in the United States is Chaco Canyon, that I've had the privilege to do research in. And there's a theory that downtown Chaco, with some of the greatest of the great buildings, Pueblo Bonito, Checkro Casa Rinconada, are all in a highly acoustic resonance area. There's like a huge reflector, a mirror, an arch cliff that sends the sound all the way across the canyon in a remarkable way. And it's speculated that might be a part of the selection of that particular point to build these great buildings.
I love that term, downtown Chaco.
Downtown.
So
No,
I'm finding this fascinating. I'm taking notes like crazy, and
Thank you,
I'm
Tony.
really appreciating this. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Tony?
Downtown Chaco, because though the buildings are empty now, right?
Right,
And but to think about the people, the color, the activity.
It's the acoustics
the
of Chaco
vibe,
Canyon
the
that
buzz
really, I'm sorry to interrupt.
during its heyday. That's what it brings to
Well,
mind.
just a comment that
Yeah.
that I find fascinating. The largest building in North America was in Chaco Canyon, Pueblo Bonito, and that remained to be true until 1884, when a larger building was built in New York City. So it gives you an idea of the scale.
1884.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that is amazing.
And some of them were 4 stories tall
Yeah.
with balconies. We saw balconies there. The remnants, yeah.
The architecture is truly remarkable and cardinally oriented, but that's a whole other topic.
Yeah, that is.
That Tony has covered for
Yeah.
us.
Those of you that are not familiar, Tony's an astrophysicist from the University of New Mexico, and he's been on our discussions several times. In fact, he just hosted a panel of astronomers 2 weeks ago on
gosh.
the James Webb Telescope. That's
Yeah.
on our website, so check that out as well. Thank you, Tony.
And he's also on advisory board.
I know he's all that true.
Yeah.
That also. So back to our discussion here. Oh, I would just go ahead.
Nes Happy. In Yoruba, the word for
Smell.
smell is composed of 2 terms. Here, the aroma. Taste is made up of taste and see.
Good point.
What a beautiful answer,
Yeah.
Nes Happy. If you have more to add, just jump on the mic. And Brian says,
Exploration of synesthesia and the composer Kurt
Okay.
Carpaccio and the artist Yingling.
okay. And Chris says, yes, the sense of smell and memory is supposed to be the strongest because the olfactory symbols are close to the limbic system in the brain.
Right, makes sense.
Right, the olfactory bulb is in the brain. Yep.
When we go to a question here,
Yep.
whoops, Christina, you're up.
Yes, talking about canyons, and it triggered a memory for me of an experience with silence that I have. I mean, I spend a lot of time in silence. I love things being very quiet. But I don't know if anybody has been to Uinta Canyon in Utah. I don't know if that means anything to anyone. But my husband and I were visiting relatives there, and we walked into this canyon, which has been used by, it was on the Uinta Indian Reservation. And we started walking in, and it was the eeriest experience and the quietest I've ever experienced anything on earth. There was no movement. There were no birds. There was no wind. Everything was still. And we walked in about 10 feet, and I said, nope, We don't go any further, we leave.
Yeah.
My husband was looking at me, what? I said, no, this is dangerous. There was something about it was very dangerous. And I never experienced silence as dangerous.
Oh.
But it was a very strong warning. What do you think that was happening?
There's research on that.
Is there?
Yes, a couple of things. Like, I don't want to take up too much, of the spotlight here, but one of the things is that, in Stanford they used to have an anechoic chamber, which is a chamber designed to absorb so much sound that you just are in perfect silence. And they found that a lot of people in that chamber would have panic attacks after a few minutes. And it appears that what's happening is our brains are scanning all the time for data about where we are and what's happening and are we safe. And it's like this data is cut off and now we're not safe. So it appears that that could be what's occurring. People are in this silence and it's as if you were out in the middle of nowhere and suddenly you couldn't see. You'd feel really disoriented and scared. That could be what's occurring there. And the other is that our brains do a matrixing thing where they fill in the blanks. So if something's missing, it will sort of hallucinate to fill in the blanks. And so if you're in silence, you can suddenly imagine sounds and think you're hearing things. So that can be disturbing. They found that in sensory deprivation tanks and things. If you're in there for a long time, you will also have visual hallucinations and other things, because your brain is normally our brain fills in the blanks very, very effectively. Like if my voice right now, if the signal was bad and it was cutting out in and out real quickly, your brain would fill in the blanks and you'd understand me just fine. So our brain, we never have all the information. So our brain is filling in those little gaps of what's missing in order to understand what's happening. But when there's no information, then our brain is trying to fill in this massive void instead of little blanks. It's kind of like if you're looking at a friend across the street and there's traffic going by, so it's interrupting your view. Your brain fills in the blanks and you still recognize that it's your friend, even though you're only, the view is cut up. So that's the matrixing of our brain saying, what do I know of this, these elements, So when you're in silence, your brain gets confused and it can even hallucinate sound, auditory hallucinations.
Well,
And
I
even in a
think
sensory deprivation chamber, most people like it, but they're feeling water, right? You've got the sensation of water on you, maybe not gravity, but water, maybe not sound, maybe not sight, but you've got some. But go ahead, Christina, what were you gonna?
I was just going to say that I actually met a friend of a friend who'd actually been to Uinta Canyon and had the exact same experience. I know it was sacred to the Indians, and I also found out later that people who've gone on there have gone in the canyon, have not come out. But so something's going on there, and it's I've never experienced, like I said, silence as dangerous or ominous. So I was curious. Thanks so much for your comments, Mike. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, good explanation.
Actually, we had two Christinas raise their hands at the same time. So I'm going to go to the other Christina. Let me see. Where did you go? Oh, Grozik. There you are. Would you like to ask your question now?
Sweetheart, she's our guest.
Oh, I'm sorry.
She's our...
She had her hand. I got confused by...
Don't worry about it.
Because hands were up. Okay. Hi, guest.
What do you have to add to this, both of you? Alexandru and Christina. There's interesting points here.
I'm very efficient.
So, yeah. So this anechoic chamber, why does Princeton even have it? What are they trying to accomplish with creating this? You feature it in your film, and it's got a lot of baffles, very big baffles hanging from walls and ceilings. What are they?
Well, because it's so quiet, I mean, you can hear your body's functioning in it, and like Mike was referring to,
like
right?
the chamber, yeah.
Yeah, so they test different things in this room for the acoustics. So Audio Technica is a company that uses an anechoic chamber, so they'll test their mics and their product in this space because there is no sound that would interfere with it.
Gotcha. A test chamber I knew, but I was like purposeful to what? I want to also ask that we are impacted by sounds even if we don't hear them. And part of that might be the power of intention, right? That's related, in my mind, to the power of intention. We send out beams of energy, right? We're not necessarily consciously picking up, but it impacts us. Intention is so subtle. And yet, we've talked with Brenda Dunn of the Princeton lab, and then we've also talked with Dean Radden, Noetic Science, and they're talking about random number generators that you can even stare at and try to say, I'm going to sway it this way, and you'll get a measurable, maybe small, but they're saying measurable over thousands and thousands of trials. That there's, and we're going to explore this with Bianca in a couple of weeks, but you know, a vibration that is sent out, maybe it's not sound, but we emanate so much. Our voice, our heartbeat, our energy, but focused intention seems to also have an effect. Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
That we may not be conscious of, but we're receiving it. Your thoughts on this?
I would like, sorry.
Yes,
Please, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was intrigued by this Christina's question on silence, and actually a few days ago I had this kind of thinking that we, for example, when we speak or when we sing something, we make some sound, we tend to think, no, that the sound we are making is only this audible stuff, no, but at the same time, if we didn't have the ears, but we produced exactly the same sound, no, we would just have this vibration in the bodies, no, but nothing to hear, you know. So where's the border between silence and sound? You know, if you take different species of animals, even different people, they have different acuities, no. Some can hear this. In some supermarkets in Romania, I don't know, in other countries, we have these devices against rodents, no, and they produce this ultrasound. And for some people, it's terrible; they cannot enter it. But some people just drink their coffee there, 2 meters away from it. You know, it's really I've seen it and happening, and they so
Ask people about
so
the
I would
Taos
say
hum.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Go ahead.
also, if we go into the Tibetan perspective, where they say like we as humans that we have this kind of three existences levels, like the physical, the energy, and the mental. And for the energy, they also use the word voice as a synonym for the whole energetic dimension. You know, even if you hear it or not. So we might say at some point. All, everything can be heard, because what's the difference if you perceive it as a sound through the ears or as some wave or pattern of energy through your other senses? What's really the difference, you know? This is a
Right.
good question to
That,
open up a little.
that really is an important question, and there's wonderful research being done now where they're finding you can hear without ears. Somebody who's deaf and might be missing major structures of the ear or something, that if you can feel the vibrations amplified on your skin, it sends that data to your brain and you learn to interpret it as sound. So they're doing all kind of research on putting sensory pads on people's arms that vibrate, and the person hears sound. They're truly hearing sound, because it's not about your ear picking up a sound and sending it to your brain necessarily. It's anything sending that data to their brain, whatever route it needs to take. And there's a famous percussionist who is deaf, mostly deaf, and she plays barefoot and feels the vibrations on the stage of the other musicians. And she's not just like a passable musician; she's a very high-end, very sought-after percussionist. Evelyn Glennie is her name, and she does it through the vibrations touching her body rather than through her ears picking it up. So then we get this interesting divide between hearing as we think of it as a sound coming through our ears, and hearing as vibration touching our body.
We just met Gardner Cole.
Right.
a musician who told us about inputting a whole song from the ethers and writing it down. Became a very popular several songs.
Not very extremely popular.
Yeah, extremely
Top.
popular songs. But this
The
idea
charts
of
music.
it just comes fully formed to the musician. Beethoven was famous for that. To hear not just from the environment, but to hear from the ethers, to hear from the heavens, songs fully formed, as though it wasn't of you. You were just the recipient of it, or it was you were a conduit for it. And aren't there are people who are even blind who can create clicks with their mouth, and the sonar creates a picture so that it can at least navigate around obstacles, right? So, and we worked with Ipo Piara, a rainforest shaman and anthropologist, some time ago, and he was saying, pass your hands, sensitize your hands, pass your hands over. Do you feel rough? Do you feel smooth? Do you feel heat, dense, cold, texture? And you can, if you focus, you can start to feel it. And then we did experiments where one by one, we were witnessing one by one of people feeling pretty much the same, not exactly, but the same, picking up this with the same regions, the same senses to kind of, I know this wouldn't measure up to your standards, Tony, but it was our own quasi-scientific experiment, right?
Right.
So, I know, yeah, we think of our senses as defined, but they pretty much have boundaries that can dissolve and interchange, right, through various experiences. I want to ask each of you how you employ sound, and I'm going to start with you, Christina. How do you work with sound? One by one, I want to hear your story, and then we'll take some more questions from our.
And I would go ahead.
Do you want to first?
I was going to say Jean has had his question up for quite
I'm
some time.
sorry.
It's okay.
You're monitoring. Go ahead.
I'll ask one final
Jean's
question.
first.
That's fantastic.
Jean always has great questions. Let's go
Okay.
to Jean.
Good.
Yeah.
There he is.
Yeah, I just wanted to use the term sound bathing.
Yeah. Thank you.
And I think if you are in nature, in the forest or somewhere or by the ocean, and you feel the wind and your body is engaged, it's the same also in the dark. If you go in the night, like under the stars here in New Mexico, and you start walking in nature, your body tunes in differently at night than it does during the day. And I think, that's all part of the same kind of idea of sensing through the body versus just with specific, what you call that, like smell or hearing, sense.
Sense.
Yeah. Yeah. That's all. I just wanted to use the term bathing.
Yeah.
Well, we're always bathed in sound, and I love the fact that a musician told us guitars are sound and singing, even if they're not being plucked and strung. The wind, the air movement is activating them to a low-level degree, but they're still singing. And so
Beautiful.
all of nature is singing at us, talking to us, right? Literally, we are exchanging, interacting like cue balls on a table, right? We've got this whole interaction with sound and wave and frequency and vibration and color and all of it. So yeah, we're always in a sound bath, and nature just happens to be really our womb, our home.
Yeah.
I would think.
So they can
Christina, your journey with sound, and your filmmaking process. Oh my gosh!
Oh, thank you.
Kudos to making a film.
I appreciate that. Thank you. A lot of people, including Mike, came to make that happen. So it was a lot of people that fell into our path and made it happen. But my journey with sound, I mean, I've always been very into music. I was very shy as a child. So if I had something to say to somebody, I would put a song together and send them the song, and that's how I conveyed the messages because I was so shy. But I broke out of that through the years. But, I worked as a DJ. I've done a lot of different things that have been music oriented or sound oriented in some way.
Including moving to Nashville.
Yeah. So Nashville kind of picked me. I've moved a lot around the country throughout the years, and it just kind of people have asked me like, oh, how did you pick Nashville? And I'm like, I don't know. It just kind of picked me. I just ended up here, So yeah, so we'll see what happens. But, I'm very open to synchronicity, and I recognize the signs, and I try to stay in the present moment. And I think that's part of the journey is I started a meditation practice and yoga practice about 15 years ago, and everybody would tell me that I really needed to meditate, and I had to sit down, and I had to do it a certain way. And I was not able to access that space in that way. For me, what allowed me to access that space of clearing the mental chatter was the sound. So the sound actually brought me to the silence. When I got my first singing bowl, that brought me to the silence. And the silence, when we listen, there is so much to be learned in the silence. How do we get to the silence? It's a little different for everybody. The sound, in my experience, has brought people to that space when they allow themselves to be present and to let go. Let go. That brings them to, it's a space, right, that we find and we tap into and we tune into. And that can kind of go into, you were talking about the random number generators, and that ties in with that, because then it's part of something much bigger than us. So while we're all individuals living this experience, this human experience, we're also tied into this collective consciousness that we all share. So our words, our thoughts, our actions, all of it is vibration. It all has a vibration to it. We are all co-creating not only our worlds, but the world that we all share together. Yeah. And that's through every word, thought, action. So we have a choice. Every single thing we say, every thought we have, every action that we have is a choice on how we want to shape and see the world. So the sound for me in nature has been my biggest teacher. I've gone through all these certification programs. I've done, a lot of different things of that nature. But nature, observing, sitting in nature, listening to nature, watching nature and animals has been, I think, my biggest personal teacher. I have learned so much on that journey. But when I saw how it affected animals, we did some work in Thailand with elephants, we did work with horses, and when I saw the impact that a singing bowl this size, right, this size, could have on an elephant, to the extent that they could do healthcare procedures on them, eye care procedures, tusk trimming, nail procedures with the soothing of a singing bowl. Mm-hmm. That's how the film started, because I was a witness to this, and we had spent enough time with the elephants that we were able to see when they went into a relaxed state. Much like us, if people are stressed, you see, that crunch right here, and you see other stressors. You can look at someone and see when they're stressed, right? Yeah. Same thing with elephants. You can see it. And when we saw them go into this relaxed state through a singing bowl, and then they were able to perform these things, that's how it all started. So for me, sound has been everything. It always has been. So that's my journey with it.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Let's go to Mike.
Mike.
And share your journey with sound.
Sure. Well, starting way back in my earliest memories I have as a kid, I was fascinated by sound, and not just songs, but the different little elements in sound. And I had as a preteen, I came across a reel-to-reel tape machine, and I started making these collages of sounds and manipulating the sounds. And so these were not songs. They didn't have a steady beat or a prominent melody, but it was just different ways of playing with sound, and it just completely lit up my brain, and I kept exploring that. I just love the world of sound in and of itself. And then when I went to college, I started studying world music instruments from China and Japan. I started working with people from Thailand and Syria and other places. And then that started to speak to it as well. I started finding these connections between cultures. And the interesting things, like, for example, there are subtle microtones, bending in pitch that occur in certain cultures in their music as a standard thing. And those same cultures have pitch that affects the meaning of words, that if you say it with one pitch, it means one thing. And if you raise the pitch, it means something different. So you see how their language and the music shape one another. So as you know, just exploring all of that, that was amazing. So I've spent a lifetime creating music by collaborating with people from around the world. And then, of course, using it in therapy or performing it on stage where I'm interacting with an audience in real time. And each of those, meets different kinds of needs, like that community, that sense of community. One of the things I've done before is take an audience and have everyone randomly select a note and sing it. And then I do these hand gestures to have them waver the note until we all arrive on one note together. And then we talk about how, as a community, we arrived at this note. And often it's a note between the notes in the Western scales, and how the amazing feeling of hearing this convergence of all these separate voices all coming together, and it's the note of that moment and that group. There are things like that are really powerful and moving. And so, then as the therapist, using things like that as well, to get people in, to open up and have healing and to express things. It affects every part of my life. There's really no part of my life where that's without some kind of use of sound and music.
What's your favorite instruments as a musician?
I play the koto, which is from Japan.
I have one.
Paul has a
I
koto.
play the guzheng from China. I play various things like the doumbek, Middle Eastern drum, the balafon from Guinea. All kinds of things from around the world. And one of the things I love about it is there was this moment where I was just learning about a lot of cultures, but then suddenly it all started connecting. Like, hey, the drone from this culture, it could be mixed with the drone from, the drone in Indian music and the drone in didgeridoo. And on top of that, the rhythm of this culture is actually very similar to the rhythm of that one. And what if we combine? And it was amazing how quickly I could lock in with, I had a friend from Burkina Faso do a video call with me recently, and my kids are homeschooled. So I pulled him in and said, hey, look, here's this wonderful musician. And he was playing the kora. And I said, you know what, actually, let me get my banjo. He and I were playing together. He was in Burkina Faso and I was in my living room in Kent, Ohio. And we were playing it. And I said, and when we were done performing together, I said to my kids, that's your homeschooling lesson for today, because that human connection through music, we could barely speak to each other. This friend, he and I had been, texting and things for some time, but we had a hard time understanding each other when we spoke. But when we started playing music, it was like we were speaking the same language.
Yeah. And how beautiful combining all these different instruments to one song, one family, one human family. Yeah. How do you use it, quickly, how do you use it in your practice, music?
I use it to create meditation. I use it sometimes as an assignment to have people try something and report back, try writing something or singing something. We also, you can use it in like the people who are losing memory and things, and using memory to wake things up in their minds. People I have a few clients right now who have terminal diagnoses and aren't going to be around much longer. And a lot of them are very numb and stuck in this clinical medical world, and can use music to tap into who am I? What's important to me? How can I share that with somebody else? And so, often it's getting somebody to sing something that immediately triggers that. And it doesn't have to be a skilled voice to do that. It's the authenticity that makes it meaningful.
We have a friend, Grisha, who is going to a terminal patient and hearing their story and then creating a song for them.
He's a composer. Yeah, he's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow, that's wonderful. Yeah.
Beautiful work that you're doing.
Yeah.
And Alexandru.
Yeah, go ahead, Alexander.
Go ahead.
I'm just saying, but there's so many things that they've touched on already, and the impact and the connections. For me,
you're a musician.
Well, you're a musician. For me, it's been that transition, and I'm much more attracted to not necessarily the music of my generation, but to world music. I've kind of stepped away from lyrics. I just want to hear sound. I'm not listening to words. And so it's been part of that journey of letting go and then coming back and then being introduced to this whole concept of sound induction and then taking that technology and going back to Western instruments. So having a grand piano sitting in my living room. So using a Steinway piano to try to play some kind of rhythmic thing that invokes this altered state. And because that's not necessarily my skill set, piano playing, but it's something that I know that I got enough keys to work with that I'm going to come up with something that's going to work. And so like he's saying, going from the koto to going to whether it's a guitar or flute or whatever, and then seeing that connection and then looking to see. So I've taken a lot of the traditional rhythms of world music and going back and trying to re-explore things and letting go of all of that piano lessons as a kid. I don't want to remember. I don't want to read.
You want to be freed from
I don't want to read music at this point in my life. Music is not about reading it for me. I'm not at the age where I'm ever going to be proficient enough. So I'd much rather go to the exploration of sound itself and let that be my guide.
My mother gave Paul the family piano, even though other siblings had
professional musicians in the family.
Yeah, but it went to him because she said, Paul, you're the only son-in-law who would play the piano during the times you visited us. Nobody else touched it. Yeah. So we want this piano to sing. It's been in the family forever. Yeah. And so, and he said, I don't read music. I can't read music and play it.
And enjoy myself.
No. You're a musician. I've heard you play. I love your playing, freeform, spontaneous.
Yeah.
And I think that's a real joy. Paul would say, play a note on the piano randomly, and I'd choose a note, and then he'd compose the whole thing spontaneously around it.
Right.
Just listening, just letting it flow in. And Alexandru, your story, I want to invite you back also when we have Jane Elworthy, who has spent like a week workshop with us diving into this trance work, and then such beautiful music. You got to play during a later date. But Paul would go, Jane's a drummer, drum maker, drummer. They would take a recorder into our kiva.
Yeah.
And then she would sing and vocalize, and Paul would play a flute, and just create this gorgeous music, trancey music. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Paul has also played his flute for birds. I'm sure many of you have done this. And the birds sing a phrase, and then you sing, and then you sing. Coyotes as well.
Owls at nighttime.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh, there's so much to. We also have a friend, Jim Nolman, in Friday Harbor, Washington.
Right. Who plays?
Will send down a microphone underwater, and then play and hear the orca whale sing
respond to the
and
songs.
Respond to him.
Yeah.
And.
So
very
Alexandru,
cool. Your turn.
Yes, we'd love to hear your story.
Thank you, Paul. You are a musician. You need to tell your story.
And of course, at the end of you sharing, we'd like to have a little bit more of the throat singing with no time limit. Just enjoy for a few minutes so we can enjoy.
Mike, if you have an instrument, we want to hear yours. I want to hear your singing bowl.
Yeah, exactly.
Christina.
Let's start with Alexandru first on that
story.
Part. Yeah.
So this is all like reconstructing, no? Because I had my life many years, and I've never thought like, what's been my sound path, you know? But looking back now, I can remember when I was here in this village where I am now, my maternal grandmother, and it's in the countryside. So for some special Christian Orthodox celebrations, no holidays, they would all gather, the people from the village, on a meadow, and they would have these live musicians, and I would just go to these musicians and stay there and look at how they were playing, and and they would also enjoy that. I was taking interest in what was happening, not just dancing like everybody else. And but then, jumping a long time ahead, sound helped me to connect to a lot of repressed emotions, which I've been collecting over the years. And for me, it was that was the paradox. I was graduating from a psychology bachelor's degree, but I was still quite disconnected from any relatively deeper emotional connection. So then through these Native American songs and also throat singing, I was connecting back with my body, and it was like an eruption of emotions, and this is how I somehow apply it also, because you know, I help people to break through several myths, you know, like, oh, I hear this a lot. I don't have a voice, you know, people say, you know, or I don't have talent, or so I kind of take it all back to, you know, the voice being a direct expression of the human experience in this moment, you know, connected with the breath, with the awareness in the body, and even like body as an instrument. Now we have these chords, and have this question: how much of our resonance box do we make available for these sounds which we are making? You know, and some people have some uh, you know, like stones on their chest, you know, and they cannot have this. Some people have this diaphragm totally blocked, you know, and they cannot make these strong sounds like huh, huh. They can huh, huh. They are struggling. They cannot use the solar plexus, you know. And some people cannot let their voice sink down to the abdomen, like, ooh, you know. They're like, they try to fake it when it's just a matter of relaxing and letting the energy flow and resonate in the abdomen. So, so this is like my approach with the voice, and very much connected with the idea that the inner resonance is one space only. It's not only for singers. It's not only for dancing. It's everybody has this inner space of resonance, and everybody can choose to, you know, to open it up, to expand it, but with whatever methods they want. But singing is one very good method, because it's like using echolocation for your own inner landscape, you know. Really, you can hear the level of confidence that you have now, uh, how how fast your mind is, you know, by the way you are talking. There are so many non-verbal cues we are transmitting through the voice, and I'm using this a lot in my work, and to you know, to help people relax. And even now in this pandemic, a lot of workshops have been successfully going on online, because as long as there is some good sound quality, you can hear in the voice with some training, no, if the person is relaxed, if they are using their diaphragm, or and all this kind of stuff, and you can offer feedback and help them with this. And so it's very much connected with the emotions and relaxation and mind states for me. So yeah, I hope I answered the question. And yeah, it's a lot of information we've been going through today. um, and basically it's the central idea is that we are expressing ourselves on many levels through the voice, you know. And yeah.
In your paternal village in Romania, this small village with a few hundred people that you were spending time in, and they still conduct these folk ceremonies and festivals. Do you break out into the throat singing? Are they
Oh. Well, it's only around
like the
60,
whole
60 people now, you know,
60
and the
people?
younger generations living
Yeah.
for the cities and this kind of stuff, and people bringing in the television and internet demons into their households. So this kind, and I
Thanks,
mean,
Western
so to say,
society. Yeah.
yeah, well, yeah, I mean, it's
Yeah.
so now, you know, it's this kind of collective events are, you know, more and more rare, and
Yes.
this kind of, you know, it's like this. But there are several parts in Romania where the people are still wearing traditional clothes, not only for holidays, but on a daily basis. And but we have here some sound manifestations, like if somebody is dying, or if somebody who is connected to the village has died, or has died a certain period of time ago, like 2 years or 3 years ago, they go and ring the bell in the cemetery. It's like
Oh, using sound to
it's
keep
like
their memories
yeah,
going
yeah,
and
yeah. To
wake
to
them
to
up,
raise
wake the
awareness.
spirit.
The whole village is asking themselves, who is the bell being sounded for?
Ah,
Oh, it's for that person. So it's like even if everybody's doing their stuff, agriculture or internet or something, they hear the bell and there's like a wave of awareness. Oh, it's for that
it's a
person.
beautiful use
Okay.
of it. Traditional,
Yeah,
beautifully.
it's,
You mentioned intuition, and I think that we need to free ourselves of our own societal restrictions. And part of that is our own exploration, as you're all doing, as we're all doing. And part of that is going back to the cultural heritage that knew these ways and had this knowledge embedded in it, and to keep them alive. And each of you have your own practices. Put it in the chat room so people can find you, but your websites or whatever. But it's really just because our society denies so much of this power of sound and frequency and voice and resonance and all of that doesn't mean that we have to live that way. We can, in fact, it's incumbent upon us to revive this for ourselves, for our culture, for the West, for the world, right? Collectively. We need to keep this alive. We need to revive it and bring it forward.
And is
We
there
need
some
so much
stage?
cultural knowledge.
Yeah, I was going to turn it into a question. And is there some stage of complication? Because I know, you always make the joke about country music being 3 chords and a whatever, a pickup truck or something. But there's simplified music, and most of the most popular music is fairly simple in terms of its scale and the way that it's represented. And then there's the more complicated, we get to the classical. And then I noticed in the chat room, you guys were talking about Philip Glass. And the last comment that Mike made said that there's an interesting switch between major and minor scales in classical Indian music, which Glass studied when he worked with Ravi Shankar. So that's
So
a
from
question
the
to me.
scale,
The
simple
scale,
to
because
complex.
some of the when you get outside of that Western scale, and in the exploration of sound and where it can all go, and the complication of it, and how it impacts us, and all of that. I don't even know how I can formulate a question, but Mike, can you maybe continue where I started?
Well, before I do that, I want to just acknowledge,
Oh.
Alexandru, you help
Oh.
people free their voice.
Right,
And
right.
find their own song.
Right.
And the song that's delivered from our souls, from the ethers, from
Right.
the wind, from the spirits.
Yeah.
So that's, we all have that capacity. Mike.
Yeah, so in classical Indian music, instead of like so much of Western music where it's either a major scale, which is happy, or a minor scale, which is sad, there are all these rules within ragas about things like you have to you have to work your way through the scale and ascend 3 times, and then it switches from major to minor or minor to major. And it's fascinating how, because our expectations as Westerners is that you're major or minor and you stay with it, that it's really fascinating when you hear there's a logic of switching between the two, and that creates something far more complex than I'm happy or I'm sad. It creates it seems to tap into things by doing that. And I feel like as a Western listener, it might hit us in an even deeper level, because we have that very narrow sense of what music is supposed to be. And so it's very, very interesting when those, it basically betrays our expectations. And in therapy, they talk about, cognitive therapy, we have these certain expectations about how the world works and who we are and what to expect from things. And when those don't work, they don't make sense, the reality in front of us doesn't match those ideas, we have this moment of cognitive dissonance. And that's a pure state, because now instead of living with a bunch of stereotyped ideas about the universe, we're now in that moment, fully aware. And so those cognitive dissonances are a real gift. And so things like that switching between major and minor, where there's a clear logic and yet it's not one familiar to us, it really feels like it opens up something in us to hear it.
Because we have a choice in those moments to break through the barriers, to break through the boundaries, to throw away all the old ideas, and then just focus in what is here, right? To expand our worldview, and that's what this forum is all about, opening up our worldview. Yeah, thank you for that.
And I did want to invite each person, if they have something to share. I know I wanted to hear a little bit of throat singing. Maybe we'll see if the singing bowl comes across beautifully on the microphone. Sometimes instruments get cut out. They don't come across so well, but we'll find out. Yeah, let's find out.
But Alexandru, finding your own song. Do you have one comment, and then we're gonna comment on that? Yeah.
Well,
that's a beautiful thing.
yeah, it's I gave a local TED talk some time ago. Unfortunately, we still don't have the subtitles because it was given in Romanian, but it was titled like what song do you carry inside of you? And this is like it's using because many people they ask themselves, oh, what should I sing? What can I sing? How to, as if they have to create something, they have to construct something, like, because this is how we are conditioned from school. No, you have to make some some plan and draw something. But if if we humble ourselves, let's say, and leave this productive musical career for later, and just practice the flow, getting into the state of flow, and freeing ourselves from this strong inner censorship, that we are judging even the sounds, because as Mike was mentioning, there's this Brazilian musicologist, he was, Benenson, and he kind of established that each of us has a kind of acoustic identity, very strongly based on the sounds we encountered and we were exposed to while we were in our mother's womb, depending on for example, if the heartbeats were regular or not, then in these 9 months, the child is imprinted, he's in this water, and hearing all this sound, and he's having 9 months of non-stop live music, which can vary a lot from mother to mother, So depending on this, also the preference and the reactions to certain sounds can vary a lot from people to people. So, and when people come and they try playing the drum, and it's like, oh, but I don't know, and then you remind them, but you've had 9 months of drum training, just remember, like tuk 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 tuk. So it's unimaginable the life without sound, and still we are quite ignorant of it and focusing a lot on the visual side of life, So
yes,
this is another thing, and so just like Bobby McFerrin has this challenge on YouTube, just put the time, 10 minutes, and just continue 10 minutes without any interruption making sounds.
yeah,
And it will be like a remarkable experience, because you're going through so many stages of fear and hesitation and all this kind of stuff, So it's something very simple and strong. And also I would like to add about this connecting to nature. We have these natural sounds. If we research, the soundscape of the children, and the soundscape of the adults, that's very different. The children, it's like the emotion is inseparable from the sound, like, go and wash your hands. We have some cookie. There's no such difference, like coming back to synesthesia, like between the emotion and the energy and sound. For them, it's all the same, and dancing also, like extension of singing and moving and playing. But for us adults, civilized adults, even sneezing in a public place can seem like terrible, and you see all these people who are blocking their nose and making this this kind of sounds, and putting a lot of keeping all this pressure on their lungs, and then instead of, which is something very natural and very beneficial for the body, or even yawning is regarded in many cultures as being like rude, no, unpolite. But research has
Kind of a
shown
natural
that
function.
yawning
Yeah.
helps to synchronize the brain hemispheres and release trauma and deep tensions and this kind of stuff. So we are still very conditioned as regards this very instinctual sounds, like
Yeah.
this is like very, very strong, very, very healing. It's activating the abdomen instantly. Like you watch this old samurai movies. They were in silence for half an hour. Like in silence and just feeling each other and looking a little bit around, and then somebody says, let's go. And that was enough because they were all very present. They didn't need so many words. Somebody was saying, like, we don't listen to really understand each other. We listen so that we know what to respond,
Ah,
what to
we're
answer
signaling.
back,
We're signaling where
yeah,
we're
like
at, what we
what
want to
to
do, where we're
give
going.
back.
Yeah.
We are, yeah. So this is
That's
very.
beautiful advice. Thank you. I'm going to get just one bit of advice from everybody. Grab some instruments because we're going to ask you to play them. But Christina, you have somebody in your film going Om that talks about anybody can hum. We needn't be musicians or accomplished vocalists. We can all hum, and there's some benefit to that. So your last piece of advice for some DIY we can take home and employ?
Yeah, I think Jonathan Goldman's the one in the film that brings that up, and he's written a book about humming. And, one of the things I like to tell people when they come to different workshops or even sound journeys that I do, for example, last night, someone's like, oh, I wish I'm so relaxed. I wish I had this stuff at home. I wish, there was a way I could find this at home. And I'm like, you're talking to me right now. You're breathing. You have your own sound. So we do vocal toning at the end of these sessions. And I said, take 5 minutes, take 5 minutes a day to start with and just try that. And you're going to see such a difference because it is the vibration within, right? And we collect energy and sometimes we store it in ways that's not beneficial to us. So it's like anything, you're sending out a signal to it, right? A vibration, and it's kind of dissipating some of those blockages that we may store. So it's kind of freeing us in some way, but everyone's got their own sound, their own tool, right? And keeping that open mind to it, that you can just hum and that'll do it, So make sounds, yeah. You have your own sound. Your breath is one of your most powerful tools that you have.
Yeah.
So even if it's just focused breath work, that's your own sound.
This is our instrument. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Mike, your DIY take-home piece for us?
I think that we live in a world of sound, and we can either be part of it or we can try to shut it out or drown it out. And it's a Taoist idea. Can we just flow with what is? Live life on life's terms is in more therapeutic language, rather than drowning it out. Or we're surrounded by gadgets that emit dissonant chords in the pitches they emit, and we're surrounded by those things all the time. Our computers and our lights and our refrigerator. And can we try to be open to the sounds around us, to just hear things? And what that does, it creates a mindful state, which is very healing. Alexandru used the word flow state. That's very much what that is. You're flowing and receptive, and listening, fully experiencing the moment. And when you do that, it's the opposite of the fight and flight state. It's very healing. It wakes up your immune system. All that inner maintenance in us is able to then function. When you're in fight and flight, all that gets shut down in order to prepare to run for your life or fight for your life. We need a moment where we're not afraid, we're not defensive, and we can receive and without judgment, receive. And sound is a big part of that. When we can go and I've done this listening exercise where you go walk in the woods and you see how many sounds you can be aware of simultaneously, and you'll hear the rustling of the way of the of when the wind blows, the different leaves each rub make a very distinctive texture-y sound, and you can hear, you know, the river and things and birds. And I've done this where I'm filling my mind and seeing how much I can hold at once, and in the middle of it a bird flies overhead, and it just completely blows your mind. And you know, really somebody else could have been walking right next to me not doing the exercise and not have experienced any of that. You know, they would have just been vaguely aware of some sound. So it's how receptive we are to what's around us that shapes our world, is whatever we pay attention to.
And the beat of our heartbeat, the beat of our footsteps on crunchy gravel or whatever. Yeah, we're interacting with that. Thank you, all. Your thoughts, Paul, and what instruments do you want to share with us? Well, we'll start with you, Alexandru, your voice, your throat singing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Christina has a singing bowl, I'm sure, and who knows what you have, Mike. You have many to choose from.
I would actually have to run get something. If I can mute for a second and do that.
Yeah.
All right, I'll be right back.
Yeah. Okay.
Some people are asking what kind of microphone Christina is using, because there's great quality coming from her.
Okay, we'll ask her when she comes back. She stepped aside for a moment.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
But do you want to go ahead? Share some throat singing.
maybe they want to hear him as well. I just realized
Okay.
that.
What is your DIY?
We can listen to the silence.
What is?
Yeah, that's not.
Listen to silence. That's your DIY. Yeah. What else do you want to share with us as a DIY for take
Well,
home
it's
exercise?
Mike was saying something very very profound and very very simple somehow, but which is hard, no? Because simple things tends to be difficult to do for us, complicated beings. Not judging the sound, you know, and just because, and this has to do with the intention, and like Christina was saying earlier, letting go, not trying to. Sometimes, you know, and you're just trusting the process and not trying to achieve something, because we have no idea how our mitochondria and our DNA are interacting and all this stuff, you know. So just to open up, you know, and just let the sound, I like to use these words, let the sound come to us, reach us, touch us, traverse us, wash us, you know, all these kind of bodily ways of feeling something. Because really, how do you separate the you know, the sound of a Tibetan bowl from the inner tingling and you remembering something from the childhood, you know? It's just a matter of allowing all this stuff, and plus the intention of the singer or the facilitator, which is holding the space and creating all these premises for this kind of inner remembering and sound work to happen. So this aspect of consciousness and the mental aspect, I think it's, you know, like Christina was saying with the Tibetan bowls and gongs and all the sound work is essential. And I think this is actually the biggest challenge, because many people can appreciate nice music, nice sound, but how many people have the courage to you know, to really be vulnerable and just let the music shatter them, you know?
Yes.
Let the music shatter us. I just think that our senses are such gifts, and to ride our senses with just so much color and beauty and sound and joy and love and it's just such a delight. So put something into your senses to wake them up and delight in.
So
Yeah.
30
Thank you
seconds
all.
of throat singing.
Throat singing. We're gonna have go ahead.
Take a moment. Yeah.
So let us all people open ourselves to the sounds around us, even if they are pleasant, even if they are not nice. Let's open our ears and our hearts to the baby's cries.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. Christina.
Yeah.
Oh, that was amazing. Thank you. Yes, yeah. So you guys may have noticed there was some pounding last time I spoke. So I sent a message saying, whoever's building furniture right now, can you pause for like 5 or 10 minutes, please? So we're actually talking about sound, but that's not one we'd like to incorporate into this discussion today. So
I thought you had some random musician banging some drums or something.
No,
like
it's a
that.
hammer. Yeah.
Okay.
I think someone is literally building something above me, so I'm like, oh, okay. Really quickly, I want to kind of go back. So keeping an open mind to the sounds and allowing it to feel, like feeling it and knowing, right? So even last night, we were talking earlier about people coming to tears with sound, right? How it can bring us to that space. And I had a few people start tearing up after the journey, and they're like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm crying. I don't know why this is happening. And I'm like, we should all be celebrating right now because you're letting something go. Please don't be sorry, and please don't try to hold it back. Let it go. This is a good thing, right? So, but I love those moments, and people ask, why do you do what you do? That's why.
Shattered
So
by the sound.
yeah, I loved when you said that. So that was beautiful. I have a singing bowl, and I can try to play it if you guys would like. I can tell you just from past experiences, the sound doesn't always come through. I think there's something with Zoom. It kind of mutes it out. And if you would like, I can play the waka for you, which happens to be my personal favorite instrument, if that's
Why don't
okay.
we do that?
Can I do that?
Yeah,
Okay.
of course.
So this sound for me, it's like, it's the one, but hopefully it comes through. If you guys want to give me a thumbs up or thumbs down if it's coming through, that would be great.
Okay.
Beautiful.
What is that instrument? You called it a waka? I'm not familiar with that one.
Yeah, it's called a waka. So it's a 3-chamber flute. There was a woman in California that designed and developed it, and she no longer does it, but there are still a couple companies that do it. So this one happens to be clay.
How do you spell it?
Huaca.
Yeah, okay. Oh, it's beautiful. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Easy to play.
Thank you for letting me play it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
So,
And let's go, Mike.
Okay, I guess what I'll do, I may run into frequency issues as well. This is called a water phone.
Oh, yeah.
And my friend Richard Waters invented this instrument, although I believe it's based on a gourd instrument that's used in parts of Africa. I don't know if you could hear that or not.
Yes, we could. Yes, we could. I'm sure it's much more profound.
I have to say the most unusual instrument, an historic instrument that you've heard, was, I forget what it's called, but it was a series of glass bowls set in an array from small to large.
It's called
I think it was
harmonica.
invented, harmonica?
Glass harmonica.
Yeah.
And I think Ben Franklin invented it or suggested it. But we actually went to a glass blower who had one and played it for us.
He came in studio and played this as part of our radio program in the day. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And and he was activating them, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, he has it's on a spinning wheel.
That's
and
it.
you put and he has all different sized bowls and he plays it with his fingers like
right. So the whole thing's spinning, and then where he applies the pressure sings them.
Yeah. Very powerful.
Individual. Yeah. You're familiar with that. Okay.
Yeah.
Is it true Ben Franklin invented that one?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, that is true.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, interesting.
Well, we always end our sessions and our experiential sessions with me offering up a song on the flute, and I just used the flute as a means of prayer many years ago. Back in don't want to age myself too much here, but I don't know when it was, but it was like maybe 1990s. The early 90s that I was introduced to a gentleman named Tony Shear, who talked about the way that you approach a flute is a form of prayer. And he said, you don't play the flute, you pray the flute. And so I've always approached it from that way. And I've always used it more in a ritual context and not as a performance instrument. But I will offer up a song. And I have a very simple Mesoamerican clay flute here today. It's only got 4 holes. So I only have a very limited scale of sound, at least in terms of how I can play it and bring out sound from it. But I'll offer up a sound from this as well.
And then maybe everybody will play their instruments. You have instruments in the audience. We've done this before and it works. Open up your mic if you have an instrument.
At the very end when we
close.
And
we want to have one symphony, one song at the end after your flute.
Okay.
That'll be fun. We've got to celebrate sound.
Let me get this thing to play. So I just offer up a little sound myself with something to add to the discussion. And well, really, first of all, before we go into your idea, I want to just thank the guest. There's so much research and information here that we barely scratched the surface. Each one of you could have done an interview by yourselves. There's so much data here to share, but we do appreciate you doing a panel discussion, going deeper into the effects and the power of sound. I think all of us have a deeper appreciation and understanding that there's music within us, whether it's through the use of our voice or whether we have some other means of expressing ourselves, and that we should take advantage of that. And I do appreciate the healing properties and the power in terms of how it can really be a partner in our lives. And so
a partner in our lives, I like that.
Yeah.
And what I heard from each of you individually just resonated together in terms of the sounds of nature and the healing power, and then how to apply it and finding our own song. And so I thought you'd all enjoy meeting each other.
Yeah.
So.
Well.
And thank you. Do we have any?
Well, I mean, people have been having a fantastic time in the chat room the entire time. So there's all kinds of comments and
let's just have some comments real quick. If you can hang out for a
well, Elena wanted to know the name of Mike's instrument.
Water bowl, he said.
Yeah, waterphone.
Waterphone, yes.
Waterphone, that's right. Okay. Yeah, I mean, there's questions going way back to the very beginning, an hour ago. But anyway, Tony wanted to know what was the music that was used to get Noriega to surrender.
I think it was heavy metal. Didn't you say, Christina?
It was heavy metal, yeah. Yeah.
No judgment, but yeah, interesting. Anyway, so that I think that's where we're at. So if anybody wants to end with a question, otherwise we're done, and I think we can do the sound cacophony that you're saying. And you're right, Christina, that Zoom has filters contained within it that will cut out certain frequencies and sounds that they think of as distortion. And so some instruments won't even come across at all, and some do, so you never know for sure.
Just to employ our drumming in our ritual sense, and we had to really configure Zoom accordingly. Yeah.
So Laura's, first of all, I want to have an official thank you and to the guests before we do that. Okay, so each one of you, Mike, thank you very much. Christina, her film is called Going Om.
Where can people see it, Christina?
They can. We've got a bunch of different platforms. So if you go to the website goingomfilm.com, you'll find the different platforms there.
And Alexandru, we are so fortunate to have him be part of our community. We get to see his handsome face several times a week. So
thanks for illustrating that.
Yeah.
And Mike, where do people further find you and your work?
If you want, in the text or in the chat area, I can drop a link to where people can for free hear a whole bunch of my music.
Okay.
Oh,
perfect.
That's a good way to do it. It's on YouTube and Bandcamp and various places, but it might help if people can get it at one click.
Gotcha.
I'll drop it.
Thank you very much.
Wonderful.
All right.
Appreciate that.
Now, with all of that said, Laura's asking everyone who has an instrument and wants to turn on their microphone, and we're not going to go around and do individual musical moments. We're just going to go to gallery view on our computer.
By what Mike said about many instruments.
Yeah,
layered.
I'm on gallery view, so I can see as many people as possible who've turned on their videos. So if you have an instrument you want to share, you're welcome to do so now. Give us a note, Alexandru, and we'll follow along.
All right.
Derby. Derby.
That was precious.